In the winter of 1818, as the last remnants of daylight faded into the long shadows of the Yorkshire evening, Imogen Fairchild stood at the desk in the study of Mortimer House. The candlelight flickered, casting soft, trembling shadows on the old wooden beams above her. She had come to this room seeking answers, but the book before her brought nothing but dread. The numbers, neatly written in Lord Nigel Mortimer's ledger, revealed a truth too horrifying to believe. £20,000, a sum that should have been used for the widows, orphans, and vulnerable families relying on the Mortimer estate, had been siphoned off, embezzled by the very man she had agreed to marry. Her fiancé, the man she thought would secure her family's future, had betrayed her. His charm and grace merely a mask for his greed. Imogen's stomach churned as the weight of the discovery set in, and a cold sense of dread washed over her. Outside the study, the sound of boots on marble echoed in the hallway. Imogen's heart skipped a beat. She had barely 30 seconds to decide what to do. Her engagement to Lord Nigel had been a lifeline, a promise of security for her family. But now, with the truth laid bare before her, the weight of the situation pressed down upon her chest. Her mother's failing health, her younger sister Penelope's future, and the mounting debts, they were all tied to this man. Could she confront him now? Could she reveal what she knew? The door creaked open, and Lord Nigel entered the study. His usual air of charm radiated off him, but something in his eyes, flickering with barely concealed suspicion, sent a chill down her spine. He was unaware that she had seen the ledgers, unaware that she now knew the full extent of his crimes. He closed the door softly behind him, a calculated smile on his lips. "Well, Miss Fairchild," he began, his voice smooth and pleasant, "what a lovely surprise to find you here this afternoon. I did not expect your visit today." Imogen's heart raced, but she kept her composure, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "I was looking through your accounts," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest, "and I discovered something troubling." He stiffened slightly, but his smile didn't waver. "Accounts? I see. And what, pray tell, did you find?" Imogen didn't flinch. "I found £20,000 missing. Stolen from those who trusted you. From the very people who rely on the Mortimer estate for support." For a fleeting moment she saw something cold flash in his eyes, but just as quickly, his charming mask was back in place. "You misunderstand," he said softly, walking closer, his steps measured. "Estate management can be complex. What you've found is a misunderstanding, not a crime." Imogen stood her ground, her mind racing with the implications. She could feel the walls closing in around her. Her future was now uncertain. Her family was in danger. She had to act now. Imogen's eyes remained locked on Nigel's face, a mask of calm masking the storm inside her. She had grown up in a world where appearances were everything, where the delicate art of maintaining composure was taught as a survival skill. But today nothing could disguise the cold truth. The man she had pledged to marry was no better than a common thief. She couldn't afford to let him deceive her any longer. "I know what I saw in the ledgers, Lord Mortimer," Imogen continued, her voice a calm contrast to the fury that simmered beneath the surface. "This is no misunderstanding. You have systematically stolen from the vulnerable. You have taken the money that should have gone to the widows, to the children, to those who had no one else to care for them." His expression faltered for only a moment, and then, as if rehearsed, his mask of pleasant charm returned. "You're upset, my dear," he said, his voice soft and soothing as though speaking to a child. "I understand, but you must realize these matters are far more complex than they appear. Estate management requires decisions that may seem unpalatable. There are variables to consider." Imogen's anger flared at his dismissive tone. She had once thought his words were clever, the ease with which he navigated social circles a sign of intelligence. But now she saw him for what he truly was. A man who hid behind his wealth and power, using those beneath him as pawns for his own gain. "No, Lord Mortimer," she said, stepping closer to him, her eyes never leaving his. "I do understand. I understand that you've taken what isn't yours. And I understand that the man I agreed to marry is nothing more than a fraud." His face twisted in a cold smile, and his eyes narrowed with a predatory gleam. "Fraud." He repeated the word with a mock chuckle. "Miss Fairchild, I think you're allowing your emotions to cloud your judgment. You must know as well as I that we are bound by more than just trust. Your family owes mine money, quite a considerable sum I might add. And you, my dear, are hardly in a position to walk away from this arrangement. Imogen's heart skipped a beat. The reminder of her family's financial ruin hit her like a slap in the face. Her mother's illness, her sister's future, the crushing debts. Every part of her life was tied to this marriage. She had agreed to it, believing it would be her family's salvation. But she could no longer ignore the cost of that salvation. I owe you nothing, Imogen replied, her voice steady, but her hands clenched at her sides. And neither does my family. You have taken enough from us. Now you will take nothing more. Nigel's smile faltered, and for a brief moment, something darker flashed across his face. He stepped forward, closing the space between them, his demeanor shifting. Calm. I will not marry you, Lord Mortimer. You cannot force me. His grip tightened, and for a moment, Imogen felt the full weight of his control. But just as quickly something in her shifted. She had spent too long hiding in the shadows, too long waiting for others to protect her. It was time to take matters into her own hands. She wrenched her arm free, using the self-defense technique her father had taught her all those years ago. The sudden force sent Nigel stumbling back, surprised by her resistance. Without another word, Imogen moved toward the door, but before she could reach it, he blocked her path again. You think you can escape? He sneered. I have already planned for this, Imogen. You have nowhere to run. The weight of his words settled over her like a cloud, and the uncertainty of her situation threatened to drown her. But deep down she knew she had no other choice. She couldn't stay silent. She couldn't walk away from this without confronting the man who had ruined so many lives, including her own. Imogen's pulse quickened as Nigel's presence loomed over her. The door, her only escape, was now blocked. Her mind raced for a way out, but every option seemed to lead to more danger. Yet, amidst the pressure and fear, a quiet determination took hold. She had spent far too long allowing others to make decisions for her. This time it was her turn to make the choice. I will not be a pawn in your game, Lord Mortimer, she said, her voice unwavering despite the panic that gripped her. If you want to hurt me, you'll have to do it in full view for the world to see. I will not cower in the shadows any longer. For a moment Nigel's mask of control slipped, and she saw something raw, a flicker of genuine rage, tempered by a cold, calculating calm. He had underestimated her, just as he had underestimated the people whose lives he had ruined. His face tightened, but the threat in his eyes was clear. You really believe you have any power here? He scoffed. You are nothing more than a charity case, someone who will marry me out of necessity. Your family owes my father and you owe me. You may have the moral high ground in your eyes, but you have nothing else. Imogen's breath hitched, but she stood firm. I owe you nothing, she repeated, each word an anchor against the weight of his intimidation. I have nothing to lose but my own integrity, and I will not sacrifice that. Nigel's lips curled into a smile that was anything but reassuring. We'll see about that. You may have decided to be brave now, but you have no idea what happens when you defy me. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. When you fail, Imogen, your family will pay the price. She didn't flinch. The truth of his words settled like an icy weight, but it only steeled her resolve. Her family's survival depended on her now. There was no turning back. I will expose you, Imogen said, her voice stronger than before. Not just to my family, but to anyone who will listen. Your lies and your thefts won't go unpunished. Nigel's eyes darkened, and for a fleeting moment, Imogen could see the depths of his malice. He reached for her again, but this time she stepped back, putting distance between them. The realization hit her hard. She couldn't allow herself to be caught in his web of lies. She had to be strategic. Don't be foolish, he warned. You think you can outmaneuver me, but you are nothing. I am the one with power, and without me, you are nothing but a poor, helpless woman. No one will believe you over me. Imogen's gaze hardened. Then I will make them believe. The truth will come out, whether you like it or not. His laugh was cold, echoing off the walls of the study. You think you can stand against me, against my family? You have no allies, Imogen. No one will help you. She clenched her fists, but this time the fear was no longer paralyzing. It was a driving force propelling her toward the one thing she knew she could do. She would fight back not just with her words but with her actions. Before she could speak again, the sound of boots on marble reached her ears. Imogen's heart skipped a beat as the door to the study opened, and Nigel's voice turned sharp. "Leave us," he commanded. Imogen's eyes darted toward the newcomer, a glimmer of hope flaring in her chest. The man who entered wasn't someone she expected to see. He wasn't part of the Mortimer family. Instead, it was Lord Jasper Winters, the man known as the Ice Marquess, for his cold, calculating demeanor. His dark eyes swept the room, taking in the tension, and in an instant, he understood the situation. "Nigel," Lord Winters said coolly, his gaze cutting straight through the deception. "I see you haven't changed. You still resort to threats and manipulation to get your way." Nigel stiffened, his posture straightening in an attempt to regain control. "You have no business here, Winters," he snarled. "This is between me and Miss Fairchild." Lord Winters ignored him, his attention focused entirely on Imogen. "Are you all right?" His voice was deep, carrying a rare softness that seemed out of place for someone who had built his reputation on ruthless ambition. Imogen nodded, her heart hammering in her chest. "I'm fine," she said, though her hands trembled slightly. "I see you've been given a rather cold welcome," Lord Winters continued, his tone still calm but tinged with an undeniable steel. He turned his gaze back to Nigel. "Perhaps you should leave, Mortimer. You've done enough." Nigel's face flushed, and for a moment, he looked like a man on the verge of losing control. But then with a sneer he stepped back, his eyes flashing with barely contained anger. "This isn't over, Imogen," he spat. "You may have Winter's protection for now, but you won't always have it. And when he tires of playing the hero, I'll be waiting." The door slammed shut behind him, leaving the room charged with the echoes of his threat. Lord Winters turned to Imogen, his expression unreadable. "You're safe for now," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "But we still have a long road ahead." Imogen exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. She had survived, but the fight was far from over. The power Nigel wielded wasn't just about wealth, it was about connections, influence, and the threat of destruction. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had a plan, and now she had someone who would help her see it through. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and tension. Imogen's thoughts churned as she navigated her new reality, a world of political intrigue and strategic alliances. Lord Winters had provided her with a safe haven, but the comfort of security was fleeting. The truth remained. Nigel Mortimer still held her family's fate in his hands. Imogen had returned to Lockhart Manor with Lord Winters, the heavy atmosphere of the Mortimer family's treachery hanging over her like a cloud. She spent her days reconstructing the ledgers with painstaking precision, recalling every detail of Nigel's thefts. Each name and date burned into her memory. The work was grueling, but it gave her purpose. Her mind, once consumed by the weight of her family's financial ruin, now focused on the intricate task of exposing the corruption that had nearly destroyed her. It was in the quiet moments of those long hours, when the weight of the task seemed insurmountable, that Imogen would often find herself thinking about the man who had saved her life. Lord Winters, or Jasper, as he had insisted she call him, was a mystery. He had helped her without question, offering not just protection but the chance to take down the family who had tried to destroy her. Yet, despite the growing bond between them, there was an undeniable wall of emotional detachment that he maintained. It wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a way of life. Jasper had no interest in love, he had told her. His life had been irrevocably shaped by loss, and now he existed only for vengeance. Imogen couldn't help but wonder, though, if that cold resolve might eventually crack. Could someone so determined to remain emotionally distant ever truly be capable of love? And if he could, would he ever open himself to it, especially with her? As the days turned into weeks, the pressure of the situation began to mount. Imogen worked tirelessly, but she knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger. The Mortimer family's influence ran deep, and Jasper's campaign against them was nothing short of a war. They had to be careful. Every move they made was calculated, and yet, there was always the threat that Nigel would discover the truth too soon. One evening, as the fire crackled softly in the drawing room, Jasper found her working on the ledgers once again. His presence, though often imposing, had become a source of comfort to her. The tension that gripped her every time she faced the truth of her situation seemed to ease in his presence. Imogen looked up as he entered the room, her eyes meeting his with a sense of both resolve and weariness. She had made a decision. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady, "about what you asked me to do, about helping you expose the Mortimers." Jasper raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her tone. "And?" Imogen placed the ledger down carefully, her fingers lingering on the pages for a moment. "I'll do it," she said, her gaze unwavering. "I'll help you bring them to justice. I know I can't undo what's been done, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Jasper's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time in weeks, she saw a flicker of something deeper than the cold intensity he usually wore. "I knew I could count on you," he said, his voice low but warm. "This fight, it's not just mine anymore. It's ours." Imogen nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle over her, but she also felt a strange sense of relief. This was the path forward, the one she had chosen. Her family would be safe. The Mortimers would face justice. And maybe, just maybe, she could begin to build something for herself, a life that was no longer shaped by fear. But as much as she had come to rely on Jasper's strength, she couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that there was more at stake than just her family's survival. There was a bond forming between them, one that neither of them had intended. Jasper's cold calculation, his ruthless pursuit of justice, had begun to blur with something else, something more human. But the question still remained. Would he ever let her in? As the days passed and their investigation gained momentum, Imogen and Jasper grew closer. It was an uneasy closeness, built on necessity and shared purpose rather than affection, but it was a bond nonetheless. They shared long hours of work, consulting on the Mortimer case, comparing notes and strategizing their next moves. It wasn't a traditional partnership, but it was something that both of them needed. And yet, Imogen couldn't help but wonder if, beneath the layers of control and calculated detachment, Jasper might feel something for her. Something more than just gratitude for her assistance in his mission. Could he, the man who had built his life on cold logic and vengeance, ever find room in his heart for someone else? She didn't have the answer, and perhaps she never would. But for now, all she could do was focus on the task at hand. The Mortimers would pay for their crimes. Her family would be safe. And she would find a way to survive no matter what it took. The day of the ball arrived with an undercurrent of tension that ran deeper than anyone could acknowledge. Imogen dressed carefully, choosing a gown in deep emerald silk that set off her pale complexion, her dark hair styled with delicate white roses as an accent. It was a gown fit for a lady of her new status, though every thread of it was tainted by the circumstances that had led her here. The marriage, the vengeance, the cold, calculated steps she had taken to ensure her survival. All of it had led to this moment. This gathering where she would face her past, present, and perhaps even her future. Lord Winters, as always, had insisted that they attend the house party at Lady Beatrice Sutherland's estate. It was a necessary move, part of their strategy to show the Mortimers that Imogen was no longer vulnerable, that she had powerful allies in her corner. Jasper, her husband, had made it clear that this was not just a social event. It was a statement. A declaration of strength and power that would shake the foundations of the Mortimer family's influence. Imogen had learned to play the game. Every smile, every word spoken in public, was a carefully crafted performance. Her role as Lady Lockhart, the Marchioness, was not something she could afford to slip from. The Mortimers had to see her, alive and well, with the full support of Lord Winters by her side. But as she entered the grand estate, a flutter of anxiety still clung to her. The reality of her situation, her tenuous grip on freedom and safety, pressed down on her. The house was as magnificent as Lady Beatrice's reputation suggested. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, the floor polished to a sheen, and guests moved through the space in a whirl of fine fabrics and whispered conversations. But Imogen was not fooled by the grandeur. She knew that beneath the surface of this opulence, there were still whispers about her family's financial ruin, about her mysterious marriage to the elusive Lord Winters. And most of all, whispers about her confrontation with Nigel Mortimer, the man who had once been her fiancé, now a fugitive from justice. Nigel's presence was inevitable. He would be here at this very ball trying to assert his dominance, trying to recover the ground he had lost when Imogen had survived the sleigh ride. But she would not be intimidated. Not anymore. She had a power now, a power that extended beyond her marriage to Lord Winters. It was a power born from knowledge, from the documents she had helped compile, from the case that was now building against the Mortimer family. The truth at long last was in her hands. As she made her way through the crowd, Imogen felt every eye on her. Some looked with envy, others with admiration, but there were a few, those connected to the Mortimers, who looked with something else. Fear. They knew what was coming. They knew that their time was running out. And then across the room she saw him, Nigel Mortimer. He was standing near the far end of the ballroom, his usual charm turned into something brittle, like a mask that had started to crack. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Imogen felt a flicker of satisfaction. She could see the color draining from his face, the way his smile faltered as he processed the fact that she was still alive. She had survived the ravine. She had survived him. Nigel, once the man she had thought of as her savior, now looked like a shadow of his former self. The man who had sought to control her, to use her family's debt as leverage, was now a man on the brink of losing everything. The walls of his power were crumbling, and Imogen was there to witness it. "Lord Mortimer," she said coolly, approaching him. Her voice was steady, despite the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. "It's good to see you again." Nigel stiffened, his eyes narrowing as he took in her words. "Miss Fairchild, or should I say Lady Lockhart?" he sneered, the venom in his voice unmistakable. "I had hoped you would be dead by now. I suppose I was wrong." Imogen's smile was small, but it carried a weight of triumph. "I am very much alive, Lord Mortimer. And I am beyond your reach now. Your family's crimes are being exposed, and you will answer for them." Nigel's expression shifted, a flicker of panic flashing across his features before he quickly masked it with an arrogant sneer. "You're playing a dangerous game, Imogen. You have no idea who you're dealing with." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A thief, a murderer, a man who thought he could get away with it all. But now the truth is coming to light. And you will face justice for what you've done." Before Nigel could respond, Lord Winters appeared at her side, his presence like a shield, calm and unyielding. "Is there a problem, Lord Mortimer?" he asked, his voice smooth but laced with quiet menace. Nigel's gaze flickered to Lord Winters, and for the first time, Imogen saw the true measure of his fear. He knew he was defeated. The game had changed, and now it was too late for him to turn back. With a tight smile, Lord Winters placed his hand at the small of Imogen's back and guided her away. "Come, my dear. We should not waste our time with such unpleasantness." As they walked away, Imogen could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her. This was the turning point, the moment where everything would change. She was no longer a helpless pawn in a game of power and deceit. She was a woman with a future, with a chance at justice, and with a man by her side who, despite his cold exterior, had proven that he could be trusted.